Welcome to the EZCODE.PROJECTS series Padlock video number 5. In this video, we'll connect our input form to our Padlock logic, so the lock will open when we input the correct combination and lock when it's not. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE.PROJECTS Padlock series videos. For those of you that have done so, let's begin. We'll first start by opening up VS Code. We'll add our Padlock folder. Remember where you put it. EZCODE Padlock open. All right, we have our files are already open for us. So open the view HTML file in the browser. So there we go, we got that open. Actually in the browser. So we'll open the browser up and we'll click File, Open File, EZCODE, Padlock, Source, that should be the one, View HTML, okay. And I'm going to open up the developer console. So here we go. Recall that we can change the value of each input. All right, so we can do 5 tab, 4 tab, 3, just in case you didn't know, Shift tab gets you back. So that should be the same in all browsers. 9, 6. So we can put stuff in the inputs. And recall that we can change the value of each input from 0 to 9, right? So we can go up to 9 anyways, can't go any higher. Now let's open the code.js file in VS Code. Let's open this up, code.js. All right, here we go. Let's start by first writing out what we think we need to do. Now, this is a very good practice to get into even before we start coding. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a commented out section. So we're going to type it out. So we need a way to store the actual combination, all right? We need a way to gather all the input values at once. So we need a combination to start with, right? The lock has to know what's the correct combination. We need to know from a code standpoint what's the combination that the user is giving as an input. And so this is why we need to gather all the inputs to do that. And we need a way to compare the actual combo to the input form combo with each keystroke. Okay, so that's important. Every time that we're here and we're clicking something new, we need all the input values. We don't know which one you're typing in. We don't really care. We just need all of them. And that gets us to the next piece of what we need to do. We need to call the unlock if correct and lock if not correct. All right, so that's a lot of we needs on there. Now that we kind of have it flushed out, our logic flushed out, let's just take the first one. So coding can be quite complex at times, and so this is why we use commenting out different types of instructions where we could say, okay, well, what do we need to do? So this didn't necessarily tell me what code to write, but it did tell me what I need to do. So how do we store the actual combination? Well, let's make a variable to store the combination. If you remember, we have a module here, and in our own module, we can put a const, and I'm going to upcase this whole thing. Whoops, didn't do it that way. And let's give it a combination. So how about 2024? So we have a combination. It's a 4-digit combination. We've assigned it to a const that's in the scope of this module. So when we're talking about scope, we're talking about where is it available, who can read it. Anybody inside of these two brackets in this enclosing function can read this. So the unlock has access to it, the lock has access to it, and so on. Now, just to be clear, if I was in the unlock, this class const is scoped to this function. So no one else in this file can read clasp. Now you might see it again here, but this is a different one. This is a different assignment. Even though it looks exactly the same, it's in a different function and it's scoped to this function. If I went down to here and put a console log and I put clasp in there, it would be undefined. So scoping is just like what we're dealing with HTML and CSS, where there's a parent-child relationship, there's a nesting that's going on. And if we have something nested 3 layers down, well, just in this case, here is 2 layers down, the clasp is not available to its enclosing scope, but the enclosing scope variables are available to the child scopes. So that's good. We have a combination. Here it is. So we can say that we've actually completed this one. We need a way to store the actual combination. Let's also console log the new combination. Let's save our work and refresh the browser. Now enter in a value to any of the Padlock inputs. Just take the first one here. We're going to put in 5. In the developer console, we see our combination value. Yes, we see it, 2024. Let's continue our development to the update combination function in the code.js file. All right, let's go back to that file. Here we are. Our next comment was, we need a way to gather all the input values at once. Now, do you recall how to communicate with the document, with the DOM, called the document object model? We call the global browser object document. So let's add a call that will gather all the input values and console log them. All right, so we're going to go in here right below our combination, and we're going to say const, and we're talking about the plural, so we'll say values. We're going to call what we get values, and we're going to explain what we're doing here in the browser in a bit. So we're going to use an array.from. So array.from's the class method on array, and what it does is it turns things that may look like an array but aren't into arrays. So now we're going to call the document dot query selector all, and we're going to pass in 2 things. So if you remember, in fact, let's go to the HTML and look at it. How are we going to get these? Well, we have a way to get value, so we could say just give me all the values here. But how do we know class value isn't used somewhere else? So to be a bit more specific is we're going to say combination and then value. So to do that, we're going to put a dot combination space and then a dot value. Now the space denotes that it's a parent-child relationship. If there was no space here, this would mean that combination and value are both on the same line. So it would say combination here, value, which is not our case. So we're going to go back here to the code.js, keep the space there. So we've document query selector all combination value. So we're going to get an array from that, or at least we're going to get a node list that we're going to turn to an array. And then what we're going to do is map. And once again, just type as I do. You don't have to understand what these things are. You will understand over time. And we're going to take the input value, semicolon, 2 lines, console.log, and now we have the input values. Or at least we believe we're going to get them. Okay, let's save our work. and refresh the browser. All right, now let's try this one more time. We'll do a 4 there, and we've got some things going on. So we have the combination here, and then we can see we have input values, and we have 4 values here. So let's go back to our code, and let's just bring this out. Actually, we'll just bring that piece out right there. Oop. And we'll go back to the browser. And right here, we're going to paste it in there. We're going to kind of walk through it. So once again, we can just start deleting on this one. Right there. And then let's just get the array from out of here. And let's break this down here. Now, we first query based on 2 classes. So we can see that's what we're doing here. We're query selector all, combination, and value. Note that these classes are nested. We could just do .value, but perhaps value is too generic. We talked about that. And by using both classes, we can be a bit more sure that we only get the inputs inside of the combination div. Now, once we have this in here, we can hit return, and we see it's already telling us it's a node list. So what we really want is the values. So we're not done yet. So when we look at this, we have to iterate over the node list and extract the values. So if we open this up and we said, okay, wow, this is a really big thing here. And what we really want is somewhere down here. And there it is. Do you see the little tiny value 4? That's what we want. So I guess what we could do is we could use an array method. So let's try that. Map input value. Oops. And let's go ahead and we're going to hit enter, and we're going to see what happens. And it says document query selector all, map is not a function. Now, this is because a node list does not have the helper functions usually attached to an array. And this is done for many good reasons, to save memory, keep things quick. But in this case, we need an array. We need those helper methods, or else we're going to write a for loop. So in this case, we want to do that, and that's why we have the beginning part of this, and we can say array from node list. Now it already knows it's a node list. It's going to be what's returned, and if we hit enter, whoops, let's just get rid of the map for now. The parentheses would be on this side, and we can see this is way different. Now it looks very similar. You can see it looks like an array with input values, but it doesn't have node list on it. So in this case, if we did map, and again, this is just type as I do here, there's other videos we have that you can look at to get more in depth into what's going on here, what a map is, and different functions of the array class. But here we just have to know that we've gotten something from the DOM, we've turned them into an array, and then the only thing we want from that large piece of information, this thing right here, if you remember, is the value. And that's why we're saying, hey, input. Now we could have named this butter, in which case all it's doing is saying this array right here, each one of these are going to be called whatever this is. In this case, we're going to call it input because that's what it is. But we could use butter. So let's just say that for a minute, butter. And then this is just an arrow function instead of typing out function parentheses, just a quick way of saying tiny little function, give me each item one at a time of this array, and then from that item give me a value. Now this property has to exist on whatever is coming in here, and it does. We already looked at that. The value was 4. So here it would say butter and then butter.value, but in this case we want other people to use the code and read it, so we're going to say input and give me the input value. And this does give us our array of input values. All right, we're going to enter there. Now that we've done that, while we're at it, let's review our next comment. Okay, so let's go back to our code and let's see what we're doing here. We need a way to compare the actual combo in the input, or from the input, with the combo with each keystroke. We can't just directly compare the combination variable we have up here as a 4-digit string to the array of strings, which we are getting right here. These would not be equal in that sense. We can either change the combination variable to be an array of string values, or we can use yet another helpful method available to an array. In the developer console, let's add one bit of code. So let's go back to the browser, and we're going to up arrow to get our last command, remove the semicolon, and map returns an array, so we can use another array method. And what we're going to say is we're going to join them together. Now you can see it's already completed the method even though I didn't hit enter, and you can see 4, 0, and that's what join does. Now if we want to remove the commas, all we have to do is put a blank string inside the join. And now we get 4000. That's a 4-digit string that we can compare to the combination. So we'll go ahead and we'll hit enter, and let's put in some different things here. And we get our input values just as we saw that. And if we hit enter now, we know our code is working here in the console, 4537, exactly what we need to compare the two strings. So let's update our code.js update combination function. Let's go back here, and if you remember, all we had to do here was just join with an empty string, semicolon to end it. Now, the next comment we created stated that we need to call the unlock if correct and the lock if not correct. So let's add an if statement to express both logic paths. Now, to prepare the function to make this if statement, we have to clean up a little bit. So we'll leave the combination there, but let's grab the code we did put here. In fact, let's go all the way down, and we're just going to remove this. Oops. And we're going to open up a couple lines and stick it down here. Again, just use your mouse or your trackpad, whatever you need to do that. So now we have the combination coming in. The first things we need to do is influence the value. So we want to do this first before we go and gather the values. If we gather the values before we do our string cleanup, we're going to get incorrect values. And I'm going to do one more thing. I know this is the values, but now it just doesn't seem right to call it values anymore. It was values, but now, after we've done all this work to it, it's changed its behavior. And what it really is now is the attempt. And it's the attempt at opening the lock. So now that we go in here, we will just, I don't want to get rid of these comments yet, so we'll just go below them, and we're going to say if, and we have our parentheses open. If the attempt, which should be a 4-digit string, is equal to the combination, which we do know, it's our constant, open curly braces, then unlock. And what's unlock? That's our unlock method. So to call that, call that method, we need to put the parentheses on it and say unlocked. And then if we're not going to unlock, then it would be, oops, let's open that up correctly. It would be a lock. So anything that's not correct, anything that does not equal the combination, we're going to lock. Okay, now we have our if statement in there. Let's go ahead and save our work and refresh the browser. Refresh the browser there. And type in the correct combination. All right, if you remember what that was, 202 our values is not defined. So let's quickly go back. This is great seeing errors. You can see specifically what it's trying to say here. Values is not defined. If you remember, we did change that. And where it's breaking here is we changed it here, but didn't change it here. So just to keep console logging so we know what's going on, and what we can do is just do a quick search in here to see are there any values, and there's one of two which are comments. So let's save our code one more time, and we'll return to the browser, and we'll refresh, and let's go ahead and put in the correct combo, 2, 4, and it does unlock our code. So let's just change the 4 to a 5, and it's closing it up, which is exactly what we'd like to do. So our combination is working for correct combinations and incorrect combinations. So that really looks good. So nice work, everyone. So we added a combination and the ability for the logic to compare user input to our programmed combination value. And when correct, open the lock. And when incorrect, close the lock without using the lock and unlock buttons. In the next video, we'll clean up our existing code base and any mess we made. If you enjoyed this video, click like and then subscribe buttons to get notifications of new content. Thank you for exploring programming with me, and I'll see you in the next video.